and welcome. I am Samuel Trapp, and this is International Flavor, and you are listening on Damn Radio. And I'm damn glad to have you. You can listen to me at damnradio.com/live nightly at 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is Missouri and Chicago, that area. If you're looking around the world or listening around the world, I'm looking at all of my people that listen to me, and I'm getting some people from around the world, and I really kind of like it. Today's show, I'm going to be talking about Woody Allen being on the kill list. I'm going to be talking about a bunch of news that's coming in on the Ukraine. I haven't really spent a lot of time on that over the last few days. Those of you who listen to me regularly know that I am located right now in Moscow, Russia. I've been over here touring in Moscow to see some things that are going on. I've been seeing quite a few. Today I was out on Red Square. Well, I couldn't get on Red Square, but I was in the area trying to see, and I did see one of the African military band festival members got to march, and I got to see a little bit of that. I did a walking of the grounds. I went to a historic place. Um, I don't. I've probably told this story to you before, and again, before we get too far into this, I wanted to say that since I am traveling and I'm not in a studio, the sound is a little bit echoey, and I apologize for that. I apologize for it echoing. I also am a little bit worried about today's internet connection. Been having a little bit of trouble this evening in it. I really hope that it lasts for the full show and that I don't run into any problems. So far, it looks like it's going pretty well. And I'm very glad to have all of you here and listening. So, anyway, I was on trying to get onto Red Square and it wasn't possible. I did watch the Honor Guard at the Vechny Ogon would be the Eternal Flame, where the guards are changed on the outside of the south. I believe it's the south side of the Kremlin wall, but I could be messed up on where I was located. But that was very nice to watch and interesting. There was a lot of people out there today, and nobody got to get on to Red Square proper. That's all blocked off. I assume that tonight they're going to have the a full series of other shows that are going to be on tonight, and those people will get to be there. I thought about turning in my press credentials, but really, I'm here for more of a personal tour reasons. Today, I got to go to a place called Ismailova. Again, it's more of a tourist trap than anything else, and I went to the Red Square, saw a couple of bands march, did some tours around the areas that they do. I took all kinds of photos. And one of the things that I got to do today that I was absolutely gonna do, and I ordered the book today too, is I'm a little bit of a history buff, especially when it comes to interesting stories in Russia. And I may have told this story before, at least in part. I like Russian film, and I'm going to get to the film issues with Woody Allen today and what they're trying to do to him. And he's now on the kill list. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about a movie that I watched that is based on real events. And I apologize if some of you have heard this before. I know I've talked about it once before, several months ago when I get finished watching the series. But if you are into history, you may be into this uh, history story as well. It is an unbelievable, very cool. It's not a cool story. It's a horrible story. It's about a murder suicide that occurred on a place called the the great, the big stone bridge, Bolshoi Kamennny Most, and that is a bridge that runs outside in the Kremlin, and there is a real story. And I bought the book. I haven't read it. It's a work of fiction based upon true events. And if you speak Russian at all, perhaps you should watch it in because you could watch it. You could watch it in Russian, and I believe there's one or two on YouTube that have it in English translations or at least English subtitles. And it's called Volk, which means wolf. And it's basically a guy named Volkov, who is a former commander in the military, and one of his generals, before he dies, asks him to investigate the death of his son. His son was investigating a murder suicide that occurred on this great stone bridge in 1942 or 43, and these things actually happened. And so this book had a little bit of fame when it came out, and don't quote me on the exact time period that it came out. I want to say 2008 to 2010 time frame. The guy who wrote the book wrote the book about this series of events, and they're really true events where a guy named Volodya, which is Vladimir Volodya Shahurin, who was the son of the aviation minister for the Soviet Union back during the war. He had a girlfriend or would be girlfriend named Nina Umanskaya, and she was the daughter of the ambassador to the United States and later sent to be ambassador to Mexico. And there's really a weird story about it all. And the movie did a pretty good job about it, but the book is always usually better than I said always and then usually. You can't do that. That's two qualifiers of time, and you can't do that. But the book is usually quite a bit better than any movie would be. And so I bought the book. I believe it's been purchased through Wildberries, which will show up tomorrow. Went to a bookstore to find it today, and they said they haven't had any copies since 2023. And so I ordered it to be delivered and pick it up. So this might be interesting to people too, because in the United States, we use Amazon. A lot of people order things from Amazon. Um, in Russia, they order from a service called Wildberries, and I think there's a couple other ones, but I think Wildberries is the biggest. And everything comes from China anyway, but seems like. But I ordered this book today through Wildberries, and can pick it up, but they do it a little different there. In Amazon in the United States, they deliver straight to your house. In Russia, they have these shops everywhere that are Wildberry shops, and you go pick up your items at the shops, which are literally everywhere. And so you pick which one it's going to be delivered to, and you just have it delivered to that place, and then you go pick it up. So tomorrow I got to go pick up this book, and I'm interested in reading it. It has not been put out in English yet that I'm aware of. In fact, I'm 99% certain that it has not been translated into English, and so I will be reading it in Russian to see if the book is any better than the miniseries. And the miniseries had, I don't know, 12, 14 series, and it was, like I said, called Volk, and it was very, very good. And you can download it on, it was on, I believe it was on Premiere TV service, might have been on Start TV, but you can also get it on YouTube. And all of the series are on YouTube, and they have English subtitles. And the story about this murder and why it occurred, well, this murder suicide and why it occurred, and the involvement at the highest levels of government, including Stalin, was pretty compelling, and it turned out to be a little bit interesting. I remember when I talked about this story in particular several months ago, I actually included one with another history miniseries that I watched called Perival Ditlova. And Ditlova was a college student that went with a bunch of other college students, and they were doing some research in the Ural Mountains in the middle of winter, and they all died in weird circumstances, and that too is a bit of a mystery. So in the U.S., we have our mysteries and tales and Donner Pass sorts of things, and they have similar items over there. Well, this book is supposed to be pretty compelling, and I know that the miniseries was pretty compelling, and I watched it, and it the history is pretty cool. And if you listen to my show last night, I talked about the I don't know, the fact that if we're going to get past this war and get past all of the nonsense that we're going through right now between the countries in Russia, it's not going to be uh, through diplomacy. It's going to be through things like art and through things like history and through things that where we share our cultures because cultures live a hell of a lot longer than short-term politics. And so if you should go back and listen to that. So I am into whatever forms of culture that we can exchange, and I think it shouldn't be limited. And I'm going to get to my topic of Woody Allen and the badge of honor for being added to the kill list by Ukraine, which I think is BS, as I said in my show last night. But before we do that, I did want to tell you a little bit about my visit. I went to this great stone bridge today, and I went to both areas of the bridge where this where this murder suicide did occur, and it uh, very very interesting. I mean, not that it matters to have gone to a place like that, but if you've ever seen the movie Brother One, or I'm sorry, Brat Dva, which is Brother Two, the Russian movie, which I really like, in one of it, the two brothers end up going to Chicago. And when I took a trip to Chicago, I made sure to go to the bench that they sat upon, and found that bench to just kind of a location for where they actually showed one of the scenes, because it's a very famous movie on the Russian side. And so I did the same thing with going to see the where Nino Manskaya was killed by Volodya Shahurin, and where then he shot himself right afterward. And so, uh, and he died the next day, I believe it was. And according to records, Stalin himself visited this boy. Now, there's a legend. It's a very interesting movie, and I don't know if there's any truth to it at all, but I do want to read the book, which I'm sure is a creative work of fiction where people are adding to the story. But I don't know. I've always been interested in books. Are so cheap here. Um, when I went to the bookstore to look for the book, I bought one other book in Russian today because their books are so cheap. And in America, you buy a book, you're gonna pay $20 for it, no matter what. And unless you go to some used shop, but you're not gonna get a brand new book, even a paperback, for less than 15, $20. Maybe you'll get lucky and get a 12 to $15 one. But here, I bought the book by Frank Herbert, God Emperor of Dune, which is one of the, I suppose, a very sad story in the tale, the Dune saga. And I've read most of the ones that are put together by Frank Herbert's son and another guy that helped him. I forget his name, but most of the ones I stick to are the ones that are Frank Herbert in particular. I'm eager for the part 3 of the new Dune movies to come out. I've watched the two, but if they could do God Emperor of Dune, that would be an accomplishment. And I bought that book, and I plan to read it in Russian, And I've read the entire series of Frank Herbert books in my lifetime, probably three, four times. And now I'm going to do at least that one in Russian. I didn't buy the entire series because I don't want to carry them around on a plane, and books are heavy. But I bought one to carry with me to read on the way back. Flying, it's a long flight, and I'd like a book to read. So I bought that book, and I have the book. It's called Kameny Most, which means stone bridge, about the one I just told you about the murder of Nino Manskaya by Volodya Shahurin. And those are actual events that did occur. Now, nobody knows exactly why or what they are in the investigations, where, you know, uh, interesting, at least in the movie portion. And I'm not sure what information this man had or had access to, but I'm very interested in the book. Anyway, I tell you all of that to say again that our two countries are going to get past this idiocy of creating enemies that frankly aren't, if we can share in cultures between our countries. And I believe that needs to occur. And I also want to point out that this, once again, now many of you know that I interviewed Scott Ritter several weeks ago and posted his uh, story as well, right? And while talking to him, he also said he was listed on this kill list, that Scott Ritter is on the kill list, all because he says things that, don't kiss the rear end of Ukraine or that say things positive about Russia. This is moronic and idiotic from the Ukrainian side, and you look at it from that point of view. This is nonsense, and they ought to be condemned because a lot of people on that kill list have really died. There are people who've died on that list that they kill and they put on that list, and so there's a story I wanted to share with you and continue to comment on. And I told you about this last night. Woody Allen appeared virtually. He only appeared like on a Zoom call or something to say something on this movie festival. And, I like old Soviet movies. I like old Woody Allen movies. I like, they don't even have to be old. I like, recent Russian movies and series that come out. I find them to be pretty compelling and regular. But I'm going to share this story with you. Many of you might not know what the word Mirotvorens uh, list is, but the Mirotvorets is basically a kill list, and it's a website that accuses people of being enemies of Ukraine, and then adds them to this list. And then they deny that it's a kill list, but a lot of people on the list end up dead. Okay, and now Woody Allen has been added to the list. This website has accused him of participating in a Russian propaganda event. Okay, so it's propaganda to have a film festival, apparently, unless this film festival somehow kisses the ass of Ukraine. And if the film festival kisses the ass of Ukraine or demeans Russia or says how horrible Russia is, then it's allowed. Okay, that you can do, but you can't have anything that promotes anything positive of anything even spelled. Probably anything that begins with the letter R would be off the table because Russia starts with R. Therefore, every word that begins with R should be outlawed, right? Any movie that has the word Russia in it any word that has a Russian actor in it, any movie that promotes anything remotely Russian culture means you got to get added to a kill list. This is stupidity at the grandest of levels. Okay. So, film star Woody Allen added to the list of Ukraine's enemies maintained by the state linked, it's called Peacemaker, the word Metatorits means peacemaker, website for participating in the Russian Senate event. The guy's 89 years old. You think he gives a crap? I don't think he does. And if he did, he wouldn't have appeared in the first place. Um, and I think it was an honor for him to appear regardless. And I spent a lot of time on that last night. So go back and listen to that. But now, today is when they added him to this list, and he appeared by video link on Sunday at the Moscow International Film Week, and he spoke about his career and long-standing ties to Russia. But the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry denounced his participation and said it is a disgrace and an insult to the sacrifice of Ukrainian actors and filmmakers. What sacrifice are these actors and filmmakers making? Are they all throwing in the towel and not doing film anymore so they can go fight on the front line? Somehow I doubt that, but we shall see. The Lviv National Academic Theater canceled the upcoming performance of Allen's stage musical Bullets Over Broadway in protest, right? So now they're protesting him. Um, this controversial database added Allen's profile on Monday, branding the Hollywood legend a victim. He is now a victim of psychological violence by Russian terrorist propaganda, and they accused him of conscious participation in a Russian propaganda event. And nonsense. Just really stupid. And they have a picture of it that was posted on the Telegram here, and it shows that his date of birth is November 30th, 1935. He has they give basics of his name where you can find him. There's 17 replies, 304 likes. People are liking the fact that they put him on this list. The site, which is nominally independent but linked to Ukrainian state security services, publishes this personal details of individuals it claims are enemies of Ukraine. It has been branded a kill list because multiple people whose names were on it have later been murdered or they've died under suspicious circumstances. Allen defended the artistic exchange the other day, telling The Guardian that when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, I believe strongly that Russian President Vladimir Putin is totally in the wrong. Okay, so he has an opinion, and the opinion mirrors somewhat what the Ukrainians are saying. I don't believe that. I don't believe Vladimir Putin is totally in the wrong. I do not. But he then says, but whatever politicians have done, I don't feel cutting off artistic conversation is ever a good way to help, which is the point of my show last night. Because I believe the same way, and this is idiotic. Okay, like I said, you don't, you know, if your child does something bad, that doesn't mean you throw your child in the garbage can and get a new one. You don't take out this. You can't turn the entire country of Russia into bad because you disagree with something that they have done. If you did that, no country would be here. None. So, Near to Tortots has targeted a wide range of international figures in the past. Earlier this year, Hollywood actor Mark Eidelstein, and Russian hockey star. I mean, they put a hockey star on the list. Alexander Ovechkin. He was added to the database. I told you about that a month or two ago. I think it was about a month. Whenever he passed up Wayne Gretzky, I suppose time's flying a little bit quicker. The list has also included prominent Americans such as U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and journalist Tucker Carlson. This is nuts. Russian officials condemn the site as extremist, and its operators insist it's a legitimate tool for defending national security. Oh, really? So, if you really are announcing a kill list and this is to defend your national security, that's okay, right? Nonsense. Nonsense. It's it's really getting wild when you can just claim that you have to kill people that you disagree with. Really, really nonsense. They're involved in a war. I mean, that we all know about, right? Um, so I don't know. I I could probably go on about this topic for quite a bit because of how foolish it is, but it's something that needs to be addressed far more regularly than we address it in America. I don't think a lot of Americans still aren't paying as much attention to this as they ought to be. That they aren't paying as much attention to the moves, the what would you call it? I suppose you could call it the inconsistencies in what is allowed on one side versus what is allowed on the other. You know, I assume that if Russia had a kill list of anyone who said anything pro Ukrainian, the world would be up in arms and Russia would be condemned more than it already is because they had a similar list. If ended up somebody ended up dying that happened to be on a list of people that I mean pick any I mean pick Vladimir Solovyov, pick Margarita Simonyan, pick one of those two. If they had a list and said these people are enemies of Russia, these people keep saying good things about Ukraine, and they shouldn't be able to say good things about Ukraine. Imagine if either one of those two people, both of whom I believe are on the Mirror Towards list too, what if they had a list that said, these Ukrainians, we really need to, you know, we really need to take care of them because they are on the bad side of this, and it'd be the end of the world. You'd hear it all over the planet. But these things don't get very much traction in America. They don't get played a lot. You don't hear it, and I think it should be. Of course, we never hear any of the bad things about Ukraine in America. There are people like me that put it out, people like Scott Ritter that say some things, people like Jeffrey Sachs. There, people far more important than I am that put out a bunch of these things, and more and more people are getting their news from places that are at least sharing the uncomfortable truths about um, about Ukraine and some of the things that they are participating in. I mean, think about this. This there's a new case. A guy named it's not new, but it's the first of its kind. A billionaire, Alisher Usmanov, has a lawyer, and he's a Russian. Call him an oligarch, I suppose. And he has petitioned Germany's top court for permission to sue the council. So get this. So you'll hear about this maybe But here's a guy standing up for his own money being frozen, right? And an interesting story. So he's a billionaire, he's Russian, and he has a legal team that he is seeking permission to sue the EU for defamation over its rationale for sanctioning him. So they chose to sanction him, and he disagrees with the reason why. And, uh, according to Euronews, okay, and this case is the first of its kind. It's the first person to do it. Now I'm wondering about that. I always thought, and I even sent a request to speak to an RT representative while I am here in Moscow. It was denied. They didn't want to talk about it, or maybe they didn't want to talk to me about it. I don't know. But RT turned to me now, and I asked him to see if there was somebody that would talk to me about sanctions, because as a former lawyer who sued the governments in America frequently, quite a few times, I thought it would be an interesting approach for an RT person who is being targeted in America for both criminal and for sanction sorts of things, especially on the RT level, to take a court action against them. I thought that would, and I'd like to speak with someone about where they're going. Maybe they have a lawyer who just didn't want to talk. Who knows? It wasn't very well explained, but they said they didn't have anybody that wanted to talk about it. And, you know, I would have been happy to speak to someone in English about it or whatever. But anyway, I always thought that would be a good thing to do in an American court, would be to sue the DOJ, the outgoing, because of what they have done in going after RT and RT reporters. And I also thought that if people were being sanctioned and their assets were being frozen, that there are legal means to go against sorts of forfeiture. And maybe they aren't forfeiture, maybe they're frozen. But what they've done on the RT side is accused a lot of these people of crimes by allegedly interfering with elections. And I don't know what happened post Trump. This story is an older story. And but I wanted to come over and talk to RT reps and see where they were in this process. I spoke a little bit to Scott Ritter about it when we did our interview a few weeks ago. But anyway, finally, somebody, a Russian billionaire, is suing somebody, okay, or he's asking permission to sue somebody. So usually, just so you know, in government, when you're trying to sue a government, usually you have to, governments, you can't sue the king. Most legal systems, you've never been able to sue the ruler of whoever is in charge. They're performing their duties, and there are plenty of legal reasons for not allowing that. In America, you are given certain permissions in certain cases that are allowed to sue the government, and then you're not allowed in a bunch of other ways. Well, it appears, and I'm no expert on it in Europe or at all, and I'm reasonably well informed about how it goes on in the United States. But even then, every case is different, and and I don't practice law anymore anyway. But even so, each case is different and depends on its own set of facts. So, at any rate, this guy named Alisher Usmanov has a lawyer, and the lawyer's name is Joachim Steinhoffel, and he has appealed to Germany's top court, challenging the statement of the reasons that the EU Council adopted against his client Alisher Usmanov in 2023 to justify personal sanctions against him. Now he sells metals and telecoms. Um, according to Euronews. And the allegation in the documents, according to the lawyer, are completely unjustified. One of the reasons given is that Usmanov reportedly fronted for Russian President Vladimir Putin and solved his business problems. Now, what does that mean? We have no idea. This is a claim that the EU Council attributed to Forbes. Last year, a Hamburg court ruled that the company's claim is unlawful and defamatory. But Forbes has since argued that it was a protected opinion and not a statement of fact. This is crap. It's it makes no sense. So here, I mean, how would you like to be accused of? Here's the reason we're going to steal your billions of dollars because you reportedly fronted for President Putin and solved his business problems. What does that mean? You know, if I fronted someone and solved their business problems, uh, wouldn't there be a little bit of detail that would go into that? Maybe I don't know what that means, but if you should be able to sue somebody for defaming you, especially if that is the basis for withholding your billions of dollars. Anyway, last year, the Hamburg court ruled that this company's claim was unlawful and defamatory, and Forbes has changed, said it was protected opinion. A journalist's expression of opinion cannot serve as a basis for sanctions. So the council cannot publish it as a purported statement of fact if the author has clarified it was his own opinion. So the guy who accused him of this was a journalist. And so a journalist is writing an article, and the government takes this statement and uses it to sanction the guy and take all his money. So he's suing them, rightly so. Frankly, I think it's long overdue, and somebody should have done this a long time ago. But the lawyer has argued that the EU's sanctions rationale is based on hundreds of articles that have now been removed or edited following dozens of court decisions. So there are people that are trying to interfere and take care of some of this stuff. Our concrete examples appear to show that the Council does not meaningfully verify sources and is satisfied with unverified press clippings even where the author recants, including recantation in court. So the author of whoever wrote this thing said I, that's not what I meant, and it was taken out of context anyway. But that's not good enough. You can still use it to sanction somebody. So you're using hearsay from another party published in an article and using it to take away their billions. Nonsense. I hope the guy is successful. But Steinhoffel claims that this practice is short of EU's own case law standards that permit the Council to cite press reports only if they come from multiple independent sources, contain specific facts, which these absolutely do not. I mean, how is it a specific fact that you reportedly front for President Vladimir Putin and solve his business problems? Is that a specific fact? How did you front for the? It would be specific if you said how you fronted for Vladimir Putin and how you solved his business problems. This is crap. I mean, any seventh 7-year-old lawyer, a kid who wanted to be a lawyer later in life, could defeat this. You don't need a legal education to defeat this. But they're probably still going to let it happen because remember, don't go thinking that the legal system is a good friend of yours either, or that it's all done correctly and above board, because most time it isn't. But anyway, he says that the EU has failed its own standards. He has also argued that the Council defamed Usmanov when it alleged that he actively supported the destabilization of Ukraine. What does that mean? What does it mean to support the destabilization of Ukraine? By virtue of his business contributions to the Russian taxed budget. So he gets taxed because he owns a business in Russia. He gets taxed, and he gets taxed a lot because he's a billionaire. And so he gets these monies, and these monies that he has to pay taxes on actually actively support destabilization of Ukraine by the tax that he pays to Russia. This is stupid. Anyway, sanctioning legitimate businesses in order to leverage foreign policy is coercion by proxy, right? I think that's crazy stuff. The EU imposed sanctions on the 71-year-old Usmanov shortly after the escalation of the conflict in 2022. Bloomberg estimates his worth at $16.8 billion as of August of this year. And so who knows what's going to happen? I hope that he is successful and that something comes from this that is positive. But this is such crap. The double standards that are implied everywhere. Are you telling me that a Ukrainian oligarch billionaire who owns a business or a factory over there or something that pays taxes to Ukraine wouldn't be in the same boat as this guy by supporting the Ukraine war against Russia? Now, of course, they're not subject to sanctions. I mean, we're supposed to hate Russia, right? We're supposed to want to take away billions from private citizens in Russia because their money gets paid into the tax coffers, and Vladimir Putin gets to use them to support the war effort. This is this is what's happening in our world today. Now, there's been some other news on sanctions that last week. Last week, remember, they gave another loan to Ukraine and the EU. And these are all being done in Brussels. And Brussels is taking the money. I forget the name of the bank, but I shared part of the article with you a few days ago, where they are saving some of taking the profits from frozen assets and want to uh, what would you call it? Use them as leverage to repay debts to Ukraine. So Ukraine gets a loan. Ukraine uses that loan to buy weapons from the United States or wherever. They use it to buy all these weapons. And then the interest from Russian frozen assets, including assets frozen of oligarchs like this guy, they get to be used to uh, pay back these loans so that Ukraine doesn't have to pay them back. Isn't that nonsense? And that they get to take the money and pay this back in. So, from a legal perspective, when you're looking at this, it is truly demeaning to what is going on in the world of international bankings. And when you can bank and steal Russian money to fund Ukraine, um, and their defense efforts, I suppose, we're all supposed to just say, "Oh, gee, this is all just peachy. We should all be for this because Russia is the bad guy." But the problem is you have to believe that Russia is the bad guy. Now, even if you disagree with what Russia did in coming in and saying or believing or proving that there were what do you call it referenda where Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Lugansk, and especially Crimea back in 2014, where they all chose to join Russia. If you believe that to be true, which I do, and I believe that there are referenda were real referenda here, right? It's it's if you're funding the money to come from that and pay for the opposition to all that with the money from Russia, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And I don't understand how people can't really see this to be the case. How is it possible that Western people across the board, across the board, are saying that it's okay to freeze Russian assets and then use them to pay back Ukrainian debt? I'll tell you what, from a legal perspective, this crap is going to be going on for quite a long time. Okay. Um, but it's okay. It's okay for any other country to have um, tax benefits from their own oligarchs, right? The U.S. Don't most of our taxes in the U.S. get paid by U.S. oligarchs, U.S. business interests? You know, they aren't paid by regular Joe Bob and his wife, you know, living in Kentucky somewhere. They're paid by a lot of rich corporations that pay the bulk, or rich people that pay the bulk of the taxes that get paid in our country. Because we turn around and fund that to Ukraine, does that mean that Russia should freeze all of our assets? By the way, they have. They have frozen assets on the other side as well. And it's pretty funny because there's quite a few articles that have said, you know, things like I'm located in Moscow right now, and I almost went to a vkusnaya tochka today, which is vkusnaya tochka means tasty, period. And that is the new name of McDonald's. So you don't have McDonald's in Russia anymore. McDonald's backed out. You know, McDonald's left in 2022 thinking that that would harm Russia, and what it did not remotely, in fact. In fact, the private, let's see, how did it actually happen? When McDonald's backed out, the private owners or the franchisees themselves got together, changed the names, and I think it was one big one because it happened with quite a few companies. It happened with Starbucks, which is now Star Coffee, and it happened with Vkusnaya Tochka, which used to be McDonald's as well. And I believe they all stayed the same. You know, it's not like if I owned a franchise for a McDonald's, I could change my name, you know, to Sam's, you know, hamburgers, and somebody else, you know, Jim Bob owns another one. He changes his to Jim Bob's hamburgers. Uh, all of them changed to Vkusnaya Tochka, and it actually did a good thing for the Russian economy, and the food is actually better now. I haven't had it in a couple of, last year was the last time I had it. I had it in Naberezhny Chelny, and their coffee sucks, by the way, or it did the days that I had it. But the food is great, and it's better than the food in America that you get at McDonald's. But the ingredients are better, I think. But the coffee, I don't know. They needed a different coffee. That is for sure. And I did try it twice, and so you know, don't hurt me on that. But Star Coffee is cheaper, it's tastier, and I haven't gone there on this trip, but I always go to coffee shops here. I mean, virtually every day I go to a coffee shop and have coffee, sometimes twice. Um, because here coffee shops are awesome, and you can go in there and and it's cheap, and it's, you know, in America you go to Starbucks, you're paying $6 for a you're paying $6 for a coffee, and $5.80 or something when you buy a coffee. And if you get one of the flavored things, Jesus, sky's the limit in there. But if you're buying something here, you can get a coffee for, geez, nothing. It's and it's pretty tasty, you know, in most of these places. But Vkusnaya Tochka, the McDonald's, did not have good coffee. Ooh, baby. And perhaps I should try another one and give it a year. It's been a year since I tried it. Anyway, why am I babbling about coffee? I don't know. That's not the point of what I was talking about. But I've been there. I kind of go with I kind of go with the flow of where I'm going, and I've done that here, and I apologize for that. There's been a lot of commentary on the board. Thank you all for listening to the show and making your commentary, and I'm very glad that you are there, and I'm very glad that everything is is going our way. There's quite a bit more news that I wanted to get to, but I wanted to make sure to cover that sanctions case, and I still am hoping to get an RT. I went to when I was on Red Square today. Across the way, they had an RT booth that was over there, and it was actually pretty cool. So there they were with an RT huge booth, and right out in front of it were these. I suppose the best word for it would be does it is when I was a kid they had these great big chairs called papasan chairs, big old round chairs, and the ones that were out near Red Square next to this RT booth were 8 to 10 feet across. They were huge, and they had big mattress pads in there or big puffy cushions in there, and there were people laying in them. Well, I thought that they were people that were like reporters that were hanging out trying to tell a story or something, or waiting for something to happen because across the way I had watched the African country doing some of their marching because they're having the marching festival, the military parades festival, or military marching bands festival. I forget the exact name of it, but they were having that today. And so I thought I could go up there and talk to somebody. But my real goal was to go up and hopefully find somebody from RT that would talk to me in English about the RT sanctions that the DOJ was leveling in the U.S. against RT reporters. And if you go back and listen to my Scott Ritter interview, he was telling me about the RT lady down in, I think she's from Florida or maybe South Carolina. I don't remember, but she they actually did a full cavity search on her, and that is complete BS. And when the U.S. is doing that kind of thing under the Biden administration now. I'm not so I haven't checked the status of these cases in the last few months, but I've been meaning to go back and check the status. And part of me wanted to find that's why I've been trying to get an RT person to talk to me about about these cases that are coming up. And so I think they need to get I think they should sue, frankly, but I also hope they all get dismissed. And there were several of them, and I checked on one or two, and they seem to have stalled the last time that I looked on the federal court system in the United States. But I want to go back and make sure whether or not they are still pending, or if the DOJ under Trump has finally dismissed them all of these things that had to do with election interference. Remember, when they were releasing all the information about, Russian disinformation affecting U.S. elections, they finally were hopefully putting to bed this issue of Russian interference in our elections, which is allegedly what they were charging these RT people with in order to seize their property. But I can't get anybody at RT to talk to me about any of that. So at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and do some research on it on my own for another show. On Sundays, I usually do a deep dive show that lasts 2 hours, not one and a half. And I have been meaning to do a look into that issue one more time because I haven't seen it. But I was hoping that I would be able to come over here and get somebody to talk to me in English or even Russian. I don't care. I'll talk to him in Russian about what is going on or what has gone on or what efforts are being made to fight these um, kinds of activities, these kinds of cases. They're criminal cases. But I explained it before. The reason these criminal cases are done the way they are is the point of it isn't the crime. The point of it isn't to find somebody guilty of a crime. The point of it is to seize their money, their property, and their assets by what the U.S. government, state governments do it too, but in the federal government system, if you can get it's called a concerted action. When people call it a concerted action, that means what? Conspiracy. So if you can conspire, if you can accuse someone of conspiring to commit a crime, whether it's a crime or not, but if you can accuse them of conspiring, there's a procedure that is called forfeiture. That means they can come in and steal all your stuff. So the US government comes in and steals your stuff by this uh, forfeiture claims, right? So they come in and take your stuff, and that is the entire point, is to steal your stuff. And so what they did with a couple of these RT people was they come in, they charge them with creating disinformation to affect an election in an effort to target an election which is against election law, and that's count one. Okay. But forfeiture actions are civil actions, which mean they don't take place during the criminal process. They are completely separate. So you're charged with a crime. They arrest you. Then the judge gives you a bond, and then you get set for trial sometime later. There's a criminal procedure, criminal processes. But if the government has this forfeiture action, that is a civil action. And so they file a separate civil action and go, here's a guy charged with conspiracy. Under the conspiracy law, we can go after any of his assets that may have been used to forward the conspiracy. So we believe that he has a home where people met. In that home, this conspirators and their co-conspirators, or any part of the conspiracy that occurred in the house, those people met, and therefore the asset was used in the furtherance of a crime. So we, the government of the United States, wish to seize the home and forfeiture, and they take your home, they take your bank accounts, they search through your house for a safe and take whatever's in the safe. They can take your bank accounts, they know where you bank, and they can take your bank accounts and they can freeze them. And then they get a judge to turn them over. You forfeit them separate from the crime. And 90% of the time, you don't get that money back. Okay. There are stories of people who, quite a few of them, by the way, and one of the typical ways this works is call it, claim he's a drug dealer. Okay. Pick any drug dealer and how the drug programs work. Okay. So, under the federal law, drug dealer gets charged with drugs in a crime. And there's a forfeiture amount that says if you have been involved in, or you've been accused of being involved in a drug crime, and the government believes that the money that you have is uh, used in furtherance of these drug crimes, they can seize the money. So what they want to do is come into your house, find the drugs, find the cash. They find a safe full of cash, but it happens to be your wife's cash. Your wife just, her dad died and left $1 million, and she doesn't like banking, and so she put all the money in the safe, right? She put, well, and I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that assume the worst, assume the worst plan, but the government gets to take that money, and they do take that money, and then you don't get it back. And you have to fight to get that money back in a completely separate action. And 90% of the attorneys out there don't that are criminal attorneys have no idea what to do about the forfeiture, because that is a civil action. And so there's all kinds of scams, but the government of the United States knows all about that because they are definitely the experts on stealing your money, and you just don't get it back. So these criminals go to jail and they end up forfeiting all the money, or the government keeps it and alleges it as a payment of a fine or a levy or something like that. And so it's it's really a crap system when you think about it in those terms. So if you can do something in reverse, like I am thinking and hoping that, or suggesting that this guy who I was telling you about before, the Russian oligarch, whose name I don't remember off the top of my head, I'll have to go back and look at it. If he gets his money back, I'm all for it. If he gets his money unfrozen, I'm all for it. I think that would be a very good thing to do. Now, I kind of wanted to spin that into my next sort of basic topic, okay? Because think about this, and I might have been right on the very start of this in the very beginning, where uh, Moldova was picked as a target for U.S. Agency for International Development, right? And I was on the ground in Moldova in like '94 or something like that for like 4 months, and I was tasked out to U.S. aid, U.S. Agency for International Development, and we were delivering. Um, I was the Russian interpreter on site, and I was also pretty much in charge of the team that was there. There were only like 6 or 8 of us, I don't remember, but I was the sergeant in charge of the group. We had a commander. I won't tell you about that story. It was a little bit embarrassing at the time, but he was African American, and they wouldn't talk to him. In all seriousness, they wouldn't. So I ran the whole show. He had to be there, and I couldn't do a lot of stuff like that. But he and yes, I was in the military, and I did go to DLI twice. Thank you for asking that question. And but I was in Moldova on loan to U.S. Agency for International Development for several months, and I was there as a Russian interpreter. But I was also in charge of this group of interpreters and mission control. We were delivering healthcare products. Basically, we were in the beginnings of U.S. Agency for International Development buying Moldova and Moldovan influence. Same thing we did in Ukraine, right? And so now there's a story that came out, and it's about Moldova specifically. And if you've listened to about what's her name, Sandu, that has been, she's an economist that was well thought of, trained in the West, done some pretty good things allegedly for Moldova. But now she is doing the same thing that Zelensky is doing. She is targeting her opposition, putting them in jail, destroying their ability to run the um, run the government. They're very anti-Russian, and they're trying to do all of that kind of thing. But there was a story that came out here that says U.S. Agency for International Development invested. Now, for us, it was like 18 point something million when we were there for that 4 month period. We put 18 point something million. We were getting paid $250 a day then. Isn't that crazy? And for being there, that was our temporary duty pay. Crazy money. And at any rate, U.S. Agency for International Development invested tens of millions of dollars in Moldova to support pro-EU President Maya Sandu, said former USAID chief Samantha Power in a call with Russian pranksters. Now remember, these Russian pranksters have had quite a bit of success targeting people. And they got her to say some things by pretending they were somebody that they weren't. So an interesting story. But speaking to Volvin and Lexis, who apparently pretended to be Western officials, she recalled that under her leadership, USAID made unprecedented investment in Moldova and massively expanded its presence in the country. I may be guilty in that in the very beginning of being part of that. Of course, she wasn't in charge way back then. She recalled that in the USAID supplementals designated for Ukraine, that there were always tens of millions of dollars earmarked for Moldova. And she noted these funds went much further in Moldova than in Ukraine, given the country's small size. Well, I'm going to tell you that way back then, when I was involved in it, we were delivering medical supplies and there was some money. We didn't have anything to do really with the money, but it was like, I don't know how many containers, shipping containers that would come by and would, however many we were delivering, 180 something. It was a big number, which is why we were there for so many months. And there were three regional hospitals, one in Chisinau, one in Beltsy, and another one. I don't remember the name of the third town, but where we were delivering these medical supplies, huge warehouses. So these Polish truck drivers would bring these containers in. We would supervise the unloading of these containers into hospital warehouses, hospital huge warehouses that are there. Okay, and this went on Monday through Friday every week. Okay, and we were there, like I said, several months. And on the weekends, we would go out and hang out, take some time off, go do some things, tour the town, do whatever. And if you went to any of the little markets in the town, all of the stuff that we had delivered was being sold at the market. So corruption rampant. And we reported it, but it's not like anybody could do anything or wanted to do anything about it. The whole point was deliver it to fund the corrupt people is what we were doing. But that's what we did. And so I believe it's been going on for 25, 30 years in any former Soviet republic because they were trying to buy them all. And I've been in disagreement with that forever. But she said that there was always so much more money available in Moldova because Ukraine is so much larger than Moldova. But she bemoaned the fact that US President Trump halted all spending on Moldova since coming into office. And he dismantled USAID. Rightly so, friends and neighbors. Trump had previously said the agency had been run by radical lunatics. That's probably true too. And dissolved it last month with the remnants being absorbed into the State Department. I'm not sure that's all that much better, but at least it's the government doing it and not an NGO. You know what I mean? She added, Power added that the halt in funding to Moldova was particularly concerning ahead of upcoming parliamentary elections in the country. If you listened to me a couple days ago, I was telling you that they're now worried that this Sandu is going to be um, beaten in the election, but she has destroyed arrested, imprisoned most of her enemies, right? And so, but Power says Sandu is the Democratic bright spot and recalled that she graduated from the Kennedy School at Harvard University. I don't know that that is a big plus, but Power suggested that with Trump going to the sidelines on Moldova, meaning saying he wasn't going to give the money anymore, it is now up to Europe and people like French President Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen to step in and play more important roles and hopefully provide the money so that we don't keep doing it. And, you know, they can play more important roles, but she said that Sandu's government has faced accusations of eroding democracy. I absolutely believe that to be true because there is no democracy if you are jailing and imprisoning and threatening your opponents. And unfortunately, that's what's done anymore. Heck, it's done in the US anymore. And we support those sorts of things being done in these alleged democratic events. And then if Russia wants to claim that Kherson, Zaporizhia, Crimea, Donetsk, and Lugansk all had referenda. We want to say, oh, but those aren't real referenda. Those are run by Russia. Russia, 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 Russia. They can't run an election. Only we can run a fair election because we have U.S. Agency for International Development funding Moldova with hundreds of tens of millions of dollars. That's it. So therefore, those are real elections, but the Russian ones are not. Remember that. This is nonsense and crap, friends and neighbors. So, but they are, this Sandu is definitely facing accusations of eroding her own democracy. And earlier this month, Moldovan authorities sentenced the governor of Gagauzia, Yevgenia Gutzel, who advocated for closer ties with Russia, to 7 years in prison. And she had a co-chair too. She was also sentenced to like 5 years or something like that. But Russia has slammed Samdu and her government as blatant Russophobes for targeting politicians and media that favor better relations with Moscow. If I could do anything, it would be to make people accept the fact that you can't just one off an entire country because they happen to be in a dispute with another country. And it's pretty funny to me that we have to take lessons from China, from India, from Brazil, from freaking Nicaragua. We have to take lessons from them in how to stay out of it. Those people all say Ukraine is not our war. If people want to have a referendum, let them have a referendum. If they wish to leave Ukraine, let them leave Ukraine and not be a part of it anymore. And let's stay out of this because it is not our affair, which this gets circled all the way back in the very beginning because Ukraine cannot accept this, and they don't. And remember, Ukraine was developed by the same U.S. Agency for International Development, by the same, what the heck was her name? I can't remember her name off the top of my head. It'll come to me when I'm not thinking about it. But, it's on the tip of my tongue. But whatever her name is, that they helped to overthrow the government in Ukraine. And I just about had it. Sorry about that, but I didn't get it. And but the double standards that we employ are just nonsensical. And for us who are supposed to be the shining beacon on the hill for what is supposed to be democracy, to have to take a back seat to other countries and to justify crap elections in other countries, to justify the destruction of opponents like Ukraine. They've destroyed any opponent to Zelensky. Those guys are all arrested too. Same thing's happening in Moldova. They're arresting them all. They're doing the same thing they did to Donald Trump. They're arresting them. They're doing the same thing in quite a few other countries where you use lawfare, they call it, to go after the bad guys. And the bad guys are the Donald Trump types in each new country. And these are the people, this Yevgeny Gutzel, who in Moldova has been sentenced to 7 years in prison. If I recall, they actually put her in prison. I'm not sure she still is, but they put her in prison. And I can't remember if she's still sitting there. I'll have to do some looking into that. But Russian officials also condemned the arrest of Gutzel as evidence of the EU and its liberal dictatorship efforts that are taking place in Moldova and other countries, by the way. Isn't that nuts? Nuts, nuts, nuts. There was another, excuse me, I wanted to talk about one more. This one's in Germany, actually, on the German side. And this is an opinion piece, and it's pretty long. And I'm not sure I can get through all of it, but we're going to make an effort to get through this thing. And Friedrich Merz, and Friedrich Merz is the new German uh, leader, right? Chancellor Friedrich Merz. He's made media splashes, ruffling feathers. Remember when he was in with Donald Trump in the office last week, and they were in there, and he was talking about, well, we still need we still need a ceasefire. We got to have that ceasefire. Russia's got to agree to this ceasefire, and he's still sitting on that. And then Macron helped him out too. It's like he's pushing for Donald Trump to push for the ceasefire, and everybody knows why they want the ceasefire. They want the ceasefire to regroup and hopefully stop Russia's advances all up and down the front line in Ukraine. And they don't want to end the war. They want to give Ukraine a chance to regroup. And if Russia keeps pushing, which they are, they won't have the chance to regroup. But Merz is a nut job. Everything that he has said that I have heard so far is just, you wonder if any of these people at all think about their own people anymore. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is the best president in the world, and I've never believed that anyway. I pretty much like him. I think he's a decent president. He's going to go down in history as a good president, far better than Joe Biden. But I'm not one of those people who thinks he can do no wrong. That's not me. But this Mertz guy, is nuts. You can think that Donald Trump, uh, most of the time, acts on what he believes to be in the best interest of the people that elected him into office. Okay. And I, for the most part, believe that. I think on the international level, I've always been pretty clear that I think he is 60-40. I'm for him on a 60-40. But nationally, inside the US, I think he is probably closer to 80-20. Although I still question him quite a bit. But remember, I'm still comparing him to Joe freaking Biden. Nonsense. And but you can at least argue, let's say for the sake of argument, that you can say that Donald Trump is doing what he believes to be the best for the people of America, not just for himself. And so that is kind of how I look at politics. Most of ours in America, I believe, make moves only to benefit themselves, and I don't think that's going to change. And but I really don't believe that about Donald Trump so far. I think he's very, very high ego and all this crap about, I'm saving the world and where's my where's my Nobel Peace Prize and stuff like that. He always has to cut up. I mean, why are we still spending so much time whenever he talks about how horrible Joe Biden was? We know that. Move on already. If he would stop going these places, I would feel a little bit better. Well, Mertz, I can't even say that Mertz is doing what he believes to be best for his own country. I don't believe that, but of course I'm not German, so who cares? I don't. I didn't vote for the guy. I wouldn't. It's not. I'm not involved in that. But when you hear him, it's all glad handing BS. With Trump, at least he thinks he's doing something for the people for the most part. Okay. But I don't believe that about 90% of the world European leaders. That I don't believe. There ain't no way they think they're doing what's best for their people. No freaking way. They're just as bad as the Biden of the world, and his crowd. But anyway, Mertz has made a media splash and ruffled feathers using his regional party congress of his conservatives. Mertz delivered a speech that immediately attracted national attention, and it's to be remembered for one phrase. Okay. The social welfare state as we have it today can no longer be financed by what we are achieving economically. That's because their economics are shit these days, pardon my French. Put differently, severe budget cuts on social issues are definitely coming. BMW's profits are down like 26% or something like that, and Volkswagen's are similar. And since that is a policy operative since at the latest 2003, there really isn't so much left to cut. So basically, Merch is telling his people, well, you better get ready because things are going to be worse. But not the ultra corrupt political people of Ukraine or the elites that continue to want to fund it. Just before he said that, Germany cannot afford all of these social things that it pays to Germans, his government promised 9 billion euro, $10 billion per year to Ukraine. That is on top of the 44 billion already sent to Ukraine. Germany is the second largest backer of the Kiev regime in the world, and its obviously thoroughly detached finance minister emphasized with some sort of perverse pride that it must sound like a bad joke to many of his compatriots. Speaking of him, In his Niedersachsen speech, Merz also announced that he would deliberately not make it easy for his government colleagues, to get away with it, but they have to. Uh, isn't this nuts? There is no reason to understate Merz's genuine ideological commitment. It is true that in general, he is usually brutal about being dishonest, even for a politician. I love it. Um, Germany's current breathtaking flip flops, staggering electoral bad faith, and underhanded maneuvering that violates the spirit of democracy is just incredible from this guy. In the spring, his U turn on public debt to finance Germany's new military stance uh, really was a massive breach of trust from his own conservative voters who didn't want this, right? But shamelessly exploiting a legal loophole, he also executed this reversal by relying on parliamentary majority that had already been canceled in the previous election. The guy's a nut. Likewise, but he's getting away with it, by the way. Likewise, the coalition then proceeded to break promises regarding energy tax relief, as well as benefits for family members, mothers especially. Germans are very angry, but there is no sign that Merz or his government care at all. 62% of Germans are dissatisfied with the current government. How about that? Merz, of course, is also a very ordinary man, incapable of self reflection. He doesn't honestly face any of the above, problems that he has. He just pretends they don't exist, and we just keep on going. The upshot of his bias is a de facto escalation of ongoing redistribution of income, wealth, and life chances from those in Germany to those in Ukraine. Even now, 80% of the country's taxes stem from income and value added tax. In other words, you work, you eat, keep a family going, be proud. You're also doing by far the most to pay the country's bills. But Friedrich Merz is a millionaire who falls under the silver spoon rather than self made variety, but that is not quite enough. What is much more interesting is Mertz's reasoning. In his own word, the central policy challenges to prove that Germany can be governed successfully from the center. But that's not really the truth. He is still on the far left. I'm not sure what occurred in the Oval Office with him and Trump, or if anything is going to come of that in the end. But it's going to be more money for Ukraine from them. I didn't get to today all of my stuff that I wish to get to about Ukraine, but so far there's no real news on it. There's no real news about um, anything that occurred from the Alaska show, from the Alaska, I don't know what, high school um, pep squad rally afterward in Washington with all the leaders of the EU. There's nothing to report really, except war still going on. That did absolutely nothing. I very much appreciate each and every one of you listening to the show. I very appreciate all of the likes and all of the commentary. Special thanks to 86 Bad Love. Thanks for paying attention to the show and having so much commentary. I am asking you all to get to all my previous shows, which I upload as podcasts at internationalflavor.com. You can listen to me live. This is a recorded show that will be going out on damradio.com/live at 9 o'clock Central Time to 10:30 Central Time in Chicago time, actually, tonight. and I'm in Russia right now, and so I wanted to, I've had to do the show in a little bit different way. So I appreciate each and every one of you paying attention to the show. Be sure to listen to damradio.com/live on all the other talk show hosts too. We have some really good ones, so go out and check them out. Thank you so very much, and you have a very good night.